Simply Christianity, Chapter 3, Christ in Biography. Although the non-Christian references to Jesus provide a historical grounding for the life of Jesus, they do not provide us with the detail we need to assess the importance of Jesus for our lives. So, for instance, although they tell us that he taught, they say nothing about what he taught. Again, although they inform us that he died, they reveal nothing of the significance Jesus himself placed on his death. And so on. To know these things, we need to turn to some other, even more ancient documents. Our detailed knowledge of Christ comes from the biographies of his life written in the middle to the late 1st century AD. Now, since Jesus died around 33 AD, this is a time gap of only 30 to 60 years after the events. This makes these documents among the most chronologically proximate historical texts from the ancient world, that is, written close in time to the events they describe. Tacitus, for instance, wrote about events that had occurred over a century earlier, and yet his writings are still rightly regarded by all scholars as superb historical sources. These biographies of Jesus are called Gospels, meaning, literally, grand news, and there are 4 of them. Originally they circulated somewhat independently of each other, but within 50 years or so they were brought together along with a collection of letters written by early Christian leaders to form what would eventually be called the New Testament, that is, the second section of the Bible. The 4 biographies, or Gospels, are titled after the name of their probable author. They each have their own particular angle on Jesus. The Gospel of Matthew is famous for its lengthy record of Jesus' great ethical teachings. Many of those great sayings you may have heard: turn the other cheek, blessed are the peacemakers, our Father who art in heaven, come from Matthew's biography. The Gospel of Mark is famous for its short, punchy style. It is a brilliant read if you've only got about an hour to discover the meaning of the world's most influential man. The Gospel of Luke is famous for its emphasis on Jesus' friendship with non-religious people. Here we read about Jesus criticizing the hypocritical religious hierarchy of his day, and yet welcoming prostitutes, criminals, and greedy businessmen. The Gospel of John is famous for its profound insight into the nature of Jesus. Although the story is the same, the angle at which John comes at Jesus is quite amazing. Simply Christianity is based entirely on the Gospel of Luke. I chose this biography partly because of its focus on Jesus' friendships with the not-so-religious. This makes it the ideal read for anyone who feels religious matters are a little foreign, or for whom Christianity is little more than a distant Sunday school memory. Although it is not as short as Mark's biography, there are still less words in Luke than in the sports section in Monday's paper or the gig guide in Thursday's paper. For a book written almost 2,000 years ago on the other side of the world, it's actually a very easy read. Luke, a medical doctor and historian, probably composed his biography sometime between 70 and 80 AD, though his research from the book no doubt began at a much earlier date. He had not personally known Christ, but the evidence suggests that he had spoken with and based his work on those who had. Several times during the 50s AD, Luke even had the privileged experience of travelling and working with one of the key eyewitnesses to Jesus' resurrection, a man known as the Apostle Paul, who wrote many of the other books of the New Testament. For Luke, this must have been a time of great inspiration, as well as fruitful research for his own account of the life of Jesus. These experiences, combined with the fact that he was a man of high education, as indicated by the fine literary Greek of his biography, made him perfectly suited to produce a work of such historical importance. A major part of my book is designed to help you read Luke's book. There is nothing like reading a primary source for yourself. This way, rather than simply relying on a modern writer like me telling you what Christianity is all about, you'll be able to test my explanations, experiences, and analogies by comparing them to the original biography itself. To make it easier, I've included a modern English translation of Luke's biography within the pages of this book. It appears in 4 parts. Before each part, I'll provide a brief introduction indicating some of the big ideas to look out for as you read it. Then you'll be in Luke's hands as he recounts the events from that period of Jesus' life. Then, after you've read that part of Luke, it'll be back to me. I'll spend a few chapters unpacking Luke's material and drawing out some implications for our lives now. Then I'll introduce you to the next section of Luke, and so on. Slowly but surely, I hope that what will emerge from these pages, particularly those containing Luke's words, is a picture of Christianity that strips away the myths, rituals, and dogma often associated with religion and leaves us with the man himself, Jesus of Nazareth. So then, at the very least, by the end of the book, you'll at least be able to say you've read one whole book of the Bible and know exactly what it says about Christ. You'll be able to boast to your friends that you, probably unlike them, know precisely what Christianity is about and what it is supposed to mean for modern life. That can't be a bad thing. Of course, focusing on one of the books in the Bible, Luke, raises a question for some people. Can we trust what we read there? It is occasionally said that the Gospels, and the Bible generally, are full of myths. Actually, the longer I think and the more I read about this issue, the more convinced I am that the real myths are those about the Gospels, not in them. If the reliability of Luke's biography is of concern to you, I've included some material on the topic that you may want to read before you move on to the next section of the book. It can be found at page 201 in the extra information section at the back of the book. In the end, however, the best way to weigh the issues relating to the trustworthiness of the original biographies is to read the book themselves. In our case, to read Luke's biography. With this in mind, the most appropriate way to conclude the first part of this book is to probably quote the opening paragraph of the Gospel of Luke, for here we can see for ourselves Luke's great concern for telling the truth in an ordered fashion. Like other books from the ancient world, Luke addresses his work to an individual, a man named Theophilus. He was perhaps the financial benefactor in Luke's vast historical project, or simply an important official interested in a thorough account of the reports about the man Jesus. Whoever he was, Luke was keen to assure him that the account which follows is one worthy of our interest and trust. Since many have attempted to put together an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as those things were passed on to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and guardians of the message, so it seemed good to me as well, having checked everything very carefully from the start, to write something orderly for you, Your Excellency Theophilus. My aim is that you may know the reliability of the reports you have heard. Part of the aim of my book is that you, like old Theophilus, may know the reliability of the message about Christ and discover its relevance for your own life today. So ends part 1 of John Dickson's book. I will not be reading the part which is the Gospel of Luke, but I encourage you, if you're reading along with this, to take some time now to read chapters 1 through to 9 of the Gospel of Luke. You'll get more out of the book if you do it that way. See you next time.